It was a bright Saturday morning in Austin, Texas, and I, Emily Harper, was nervously pacing in my room. My best friend, Jason Reynolds, had invited me over to his house to help him with a school project. Little did I know, this visit would turn into an experience that would teach me more about life than any classroom ever could. Jason had always spoken highly of his father, Mr. Reynolds, a tall, imposing man with a deep voice and a commanding presence. He wasn't just big in stature, his personality was equally impactful. Growing up, I had often felt intimidated by him during our brief encounters. But today, I would have a chance to see another side of him. As I walked into the Reynolds house, the first thing I noticed was how welcoming it felt. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the kitchen. Jason's father, Mr. Reynolds, was there, tinkering with a small mechanical model on the kitchen counter. He looked up, his face breaking into a warm, genuine smile. "Emily, good to see you," he said, his voice much softer than I had imagined. "Jason tells me you're working on the robotics project together." "Yes, sir," I replied, a little awkwardly. "We're trying to build a simple automated vehicle for the science fair." "Well, you're in luck," he said, gesturing toward his workshop in the garage. "I've got a few tools and materials you might find useful." I followed him to the garage, marveling at the collection of gadgets, tools, and projects that filled the room. Everything had its place, and everything seemed to tell a story. Mr. Reynolds had a way of making his workshop feel like a place where creativity and curiosity were encouraged, rather than judged. Over the next few hours, Jason and I worked on our project, but I couldn't help noticing how Mr. Reynolds moved around the garage, quietly observing, offering advice without ever taking over. He explained how small adjustments could make a big difference in the vehicle's balance and speed. His voice was firm but kind, and his patience was remarkable. "Sometimes," he said as he tightened a tiny screw, "it's not about rushing to finish, but about understanding the process. That's where real learning happens." I nodded, realizing that this advice wasn't just about robotics, it applied to life in general. Later that afternoon, Jason and I took a break and sat on the porch. I watched as Mr. Reynolds tended to his small garden. The same man who had seemed intimidating in the past moved with such care and gentleness among the plants. It was humbling to see someone so strong handle something delicate with such respect. "You know, Emily," he said, walking up to the porch, "life is full of challenges. Some will seem overwhelming, and others will feel small. The key is to approach each with patience and understanding. Strength isn't always about size, it's about heart and persistence." I felt a lump in my throat. I had never really thought of strength in that way before. Seeing his kindness and wisdom firsthand made me reflect on my own approach to challenges. Jason joined us with a glass of lemonade, and the three of us spent the evening talking about school, dreams, and aspirations. Mr. Reynolds shared stories from his own youth, about mistakes he had made, lessons he had learned, and the people who had shaped him along the way. There was no judgment, only encouragement and insight. By the time I left that evening, I felt different. Not in some dramatic, sudden way, but in a quiet, profound sense of understanding. Mr. Reynolds had shown me that even the most imposing people could be sources of guidance and inspiration. I realized that admiration didn't have to come from friends my own age, sometimes it came from those whose experience and perspective could broaden my own. Over the next few weeks, Jason and I finished our project, and we did well at the science fair. But what stayed with me wasn't the recognition or the small trophy we won, it was the lesson I had learned from someone I had once been intimidated by. Life continued, as it always does, but I carried Mr. Reynolds' words with me: "Strength is measured not by how you appear, but by how you act, how you care, and how you persist." And sometimes, the people we least expect become our greatest teachers. Years later, whenever I faced a difficult decision or felt overwhelmed by challenges, I would think back to that Saturday in Austin. I would remember the big, kind man who had taught me that patience, empathy, and curiosity were far more powerful than size or authority. And I would smile, grateful for the quiet wisdom that had shaped me in ways I would carry forever.